our Bay Area wetlands. The wetlands are places that border waterways and consist of low-lying land with shallow water. Multiple species of animals, birds, fish, and insects call them home. And we as humans rely on the wetlands too, for maintaining clean drinking water.
San Francisco Bay Estuary is the largest estuary on the coast of all the Americas, and it's a major stopping grounds for migratory birds. So we're right along what's called the Pacific Flyway, where millions of birds every year are migrating north and south, and they need an area to stop, take shelter, rest, eat food. So really, really important for birds. 2/3 of the salmon that are commercially harvested go through the San Francisco Bay on their way back upstream to reproduce. And then countless other invertebrates, small mammals, and also plant species that are out there depend on these wetlands.
I remember one time when I was in 5th grade, I got the opportunity to go kayaking in Elkhorn Slough in Moss Landing. And we went kayaking. First of all, it was my first time kayaking, and second, there were seals that came up beside our kayak, and that scared the crap out of me. But it was really cool that they were so playful and they were not afraid of humans, and that, you know, they wanted to be next to us, and that was a lot of fun.
The bay needs the wetlands to filter out pollution, and our global climate conditions rely on carbon being stored in their plant communities to prevent the release of carbon dioxide. The wetlands stop flash floods by soaking up as much water as they can.
So we've lost over 90% of the wetlands around the San Francisco Bay. So originally there were nearly 200,000 acres of wetlands that were found around the San Francisco Bay. So these provide buffers for us. So if you're thinking that 1 acre of wetlands can hold 1 million gallons of water, that's definitely damage that could do to our communities. So we're thinking about, we have millions of people that live around the San Francisco Bay, and so having salt marshes around the San Francisco Bay is going to help us protect our communities. So there's an estimated $5 billion worth of housing and infrastructure around the San Francisco Bay. And if we think about, climate change, we have a lot of things to think about there. We're looking at 55 inches by the end of the century. So that's going to be things that we have to deal with. And so having these salt marshes around the San Francisco Bay is going to help protect us.
The gold rush destroyed nearly 90% of the bay's tidal marsh and reduced the bay by 1/3. By 1961, Bay Area residents had access to less than 6 miles of shoreline that was heavily polluted, and further plans were made to fill 60% of the remaining bay. In 1961, with our bay in the state that it was, 3 women took action. Kay Kerr, Sylvia McLaughlin, and Esther Gulick created the Save San Francisco Bay Association. Their movement was inspired from a depiction published in the Oakland Tribune that showed the bay reduced to a narrow shipping channel by 2020. Today, with more than 50,000 members and supporters, Save the Bay has made the bay healthier than it has been in 50 years. Industrial pollution has greatly reduced, and bayfill projects have halted and been replaced with various wetland restoration projects. Their efforts have provided 300 miles of trails along the wetlands for the public to view wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, Save the Bay started in 1961, so at that time the bay was being rapidly filled in. People had no idea of how important they are, what they offer, the ecosystem services, and then also the vital habitat that they provide. people really don't understand that a lot of the trash that we see out in the bay and out in the marshlands is coming from our cities, and all of our actions that we do within our city limits affect the bay.
I guess kind of an ongoing thing that I like to do is go for walks around Bixby Park, and if you go early enough in the morning when the animals aren't disturbed, you can find brown pelicans, and you can see a whole flock of them. Pelicans are very graceful and calm in their demeanor, and that's always something that you don't get to see in Silicon Valley. And so it's nice to see that even though there's this crazy world going on around us, the animals are still calm. They still want to have a good morning. And that you can like just be there and spend time with them and just share that moment, I guess. It's bad enough that all of our storm drainage goes into the bay, but when you come out here and dump your grease into the wetlands or something like that, that's not going to help the animals. And if there's no animals, then if there's no animals and if there's no plants, then the whole environment dies, the whole habitat dies, and so then there won't be any wetlands, right? So you just got to respect it.
In the past 100 years, some 60% of these ecosystems have been lost worldwide due to pollution, drainage for agriculture, groundwater pumping, and urban development. California alone lost 95% of its wetlands over the last 125 years. Some of the most commonly seen waste items include plastic bags, styrofoam food containers, and cigarette butts. The number of cigarette butts alone that wash into the bay total to more than 3 million annually. The pollution that washes through drains and creeks discharges into the bay without being properly treated, causing vast damage to plants and animals in the area. If we stop this type of pollution as soon as possible, we would see a significant increase in the health of the water and wetlands in our Bay Area.
Cigarette butts is the latest pollution that we've tried to combat from Save the Bay. We started off with polystyrene, styrofoam bans, and then plastic bag bans, which has now gone statewide. Cigarette butts is a big challenge, though, because it can be attacking a people's character, but really Save the Bay is not going out for smokers individually, but for the waste that it's created. So all those butts, the filters of the plastic cigarette, actually accumulate all the toxins of the cigarettes and then are just discarded on the streets like it's an ashtray, and then all these cigarette butts wash into the bay. It's almost as if people don't see these cigarette butts as being trash anymore because they're so commonly out there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways we can approach it. One would be great if there was a certain kind of tax on the cigarette butts that maybe if they were collected and brought back, then they can be redeemed, like for plastic in cans. Or going after the cigarette companies to take responsibility for their product. It's done with other products like electronic waste, computers. There's a certain amount of money these companies have to pay to make sure that they're properly disposed of.
The efforts of Save the Bay have been significant and have even brought about changes in the law. Chapter 17 of the City and County of San Francisco Environment Code requires all food establishments to charge a minimum of 10 cents on all checkout bags. The goal of the ordinance is to reduce litter, waste, and contamination in the environment and in recycling and composting programs. The intended result is to reduce costs to the taxpayer and improve water quality in the bay and in the ocean through pollution reduction.
So we're currently working on a project to help protect some salt ponds that are found in Redwood City. So there's 1,400 acres of restorable salt ponds that are in Redwood City that Cargill currently has slated for development plans. But these are really crucial. If you're thinking about climate change around the San Francisco Bay, think about what 1,400 acres of wetlands can do for us. So if we're looking at 55 inches of sea level rise here around the San Francisco Bay, and thinking about all the infrastructure that's around those salt ponds, we don't need to be building more on the bay. What we need to be doing is helping to protect those areas that are already around the San Francisco Bay. So Save the Bay has been working to give the Bay a voice for over 50 years. We've been working to prevent reckless development along the shoreline as well as pollution prevention, and we've been doing restoration work for over 15 years now. So everybody can do their part. Everybody can chip in, maybe become a member. We're a member-based organization, so by doing that, you're providing funding for restoration work as well as our policy work. You can also come out and volunteer. So like I mentioned, every weekend we have volunteer events where people can come and protect their shorelines by creating habitat for birds as well as other wildlife that lives along the shore. So I think that everybody that lives around the San Francisco Bay has a stake in the environment around them. So the salt marshes that are around the San Francisco Bay, they belong to everybody. So these are areas that we can use, that we can appreciate for the wildlife that lives there. So we have endangered species that depend on them, as well as thousands of other migratory birds that use the San Francisco Bay for habitat. And that's all things that we appreciate as just community members here around the San Francisco Bay.